Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast, and we are back again after another 3-0 victory against Bournemouth. 2 games left of the title race. Arsenal are still first for now. City have got Fulham next, and they've got Tottenham after that. But lads, first things first, how are you guys feeling?
Beautiful, mate. It's a wonderful day. This is what I live for. I love moments like this. I get excited. I think that there's 2 schools of fan right now. There are people that are absolutely bricking it, and then there are people that are extremely happy to be in this position. Something that I've hoped for years, to be honest with you, to be this invested and have this many stakes involved this late in the season. It's everything that I would wanted to see from an Arsenal perspective, and I'm enthralled. I think I'm sitting there, I'm watching games, I'm looking at the table, and I'm like, the last time I was this invested in May was when I was a lot younger, and I don't think that many could say the same. So yeah, I'm excited, mate. I'm excited.
Alex, how do you feel? Do you feel like it's going to happen? Is your mind changing?
No, but actually, like I've reached a real place of like calm about it, where I feel genuinely whatever happens, I think I'll be okay. Like, obviously, I want us to win the title. I'm not saying I don't. So you're saying you don't want us to win the title? I would love us to win the title. But if we don't, like, is there a bad outcome for Arsenal from this point? I can't see us going to, we might lose at Old Trafford. We might lose against Everton. But are we going to come out of this season and look back on it and go, this was a wasted year where we made no progress? We're going nowhere as a club. We have so much to take from this season, even if we come second. So I don't know. I've reached a real place of calm and a real sort of sense of like, actually, whatever happens will happen. The club is on the right trajectory. And it's just, I'd said this on Twitter, I think. It's like, you can't convince me that what we've done this season, if we finish on 89 points, is anything other than a success. Okay, it wasn't the ultimate success. It wasn't exactly what we all want long term. But, we reference it, that Gary Neville thing where we sort of dropped points against Newcastle when we were chasing top 4. It was like football would never resume again. Football would never come back. There wasn't going to be a transfer window. Arsenal were going to... That was it. We know there's so much to be positive about. So, yeah, I would say my yearning for a title is still there, but there's the sort of the alternate where we don't is becoming a lot much calmer place, I would say.
Yeah.
What about you, Bhavs?
I mean, look, I think me being lucky enough to go to the ground, I definitely feel like there's a sense that it might happen. Even speaking to like the stewards and stuff, they're like, it might happen. We have to plan for the parade and da-da-da. For the last game, actually, I was in the Arsenal box and I was speaking to some American person who'd come over.
Clang.
And he said like he might come back for the parade. And I was like, listen, mate, I wouldn't be booking that too soon. You never quite know.
We were saying with George, odds on we start a GoFundMe to fund George to come over for the parade if it happens. I'm going to be in Gran Canaria if it happens. I'm fuming.
Yeah. So, listen. We'll have to get to that stage if we, get to that stage, and we've got some important games between that. But let's talk Bournemouth first. And I think specifically I want to focus on actually with our goalkeeper. And I say that because look, David Raya has won the Golden Glove, having missed the first 4 games of the season. He's now kept 15 clean sheets, 15 clean sheets. Arsenal have kept 17 in total. And there's this now talk that maybe he doesn't quite deserve it, and maybe it's the defence's award and the defense deserves it more. Now, I looked at some stats from last season, actually, and this idea that Raya is maybe now a poor goalkeeper because his goals prevented isn't as high as Onana's or Leno's or stuff like that. And actually, surprisingly, Raya was very good last year for Brentford, aside that, conceded more shots, the highest save percentage in the league. I think he had like 3 goals prevented. So he very decent stats, even 12 clean sheets. He's kept the most clean sheets outright compared to this year and last year combined. So we'll go to George first. George, do you think David Raya has deserved this Golden Glove, and maybe it's a bit unfair to just say it's the defence and not the fact that he's also played a massive part?
He's absolutely deserved it. I don't think that you can critique. He's part of the defense. He's a major reason for the idea that Arsenal don't face a lot of shots. If you're going to attribute the defense, what you're basically saying is the defense is responsible for stopping shots at reaching the goal, and he's a big part of that with his proactivity. He's a big part of that in terms of his positioning, in terms of preventing more dangerous situations. I think where the pushback comes from, and I've definitely understood it because I've mentioned it on the pod, I think that from a pure shot stopping perspective, not just David Raya individually from last year to this season, it's absolutely down, unequivocal. But in terms of even our performance with Aaron Ramsdale. Aaron Ramsdale's numbers of last season, David Raya's numbers are still down this season. And so people are maybe frustrated that there's no more moments with David Raya that they feel that he could maybe have saved and done better in individual moments. But then you have to pull yourself out of that and say, okay, well, what's the body of work look like? And he's been the most proactive keeper in the world. He's been the keeper that has essentially created an environment where we're able to have so much build-up flexibility because of the high positions that he takes, which are unique to no one else in the world. And so he's providing value in non-traditional senses, which is why I think there's this push and pull from the average fan who thinks goalkeeping is a traditional role. Keep the ball out of your net. And, from that perspective, it's definitely less than last season compared to Aaron. It's definitely less from Raya's perspective in terms of his individual performance there. But then all these other aspects of goalkeeping and even the response, like I know people don't want to hear it, but the response after a mistake, David Raya has consistently shown incredible mentality for. You can talk about the Manchester City game. You can talk about Bayern. You can talk about, I think, what was our previous league game as well? He made a pretty shocking error. It was against Chelsea, wasn't it? And I think his response to it was brilliant. So he shows things that I think are not traditional. He's very much the modern goalkeeper, and those become a lot more difficult to evaluate. By the way, like high positioning. What's the stat that shows me he's high positioning? Well, there's that one chart that talks about how high his line is, right? But that's difficult to see. The build-up flexibility, unless you're somebody that thinks about the game in a tactical way, you're not going to see that point of difference. The proactivity on crosses, for example, that's something that contributes to our defensive set piece prowess. So I do think that a lot of people are wrong, where he definitely deserves the Golden Glove. I mean, he's responsible for creating an environment where we face less shots, and he's really important to that. But I do want to balance that on the other hand with saying, like, he's absolutely done more errors, I think, than I'm comfortable with in terms of, I think he needs to iron those out across the point of a season. I don't think it stops us from achieving any goals, but if I had to look at it honestly, from maybe September to about November, those goals were frequent. Then there was a period, I think, from November to about March, where I think he made almost no errors, and it was brilliant. And then in the last 2 months, I think that I'd say that a couple errors in the key moments I would talk about, not a normal play, have happened. So across the whole, you could argue there's been 4 or 5 months where David Raya has shown pretty individual, clear goalkeeping errors. And I think it hasn't stopped us, but I think that if those were out of his game, he would get much more uniform praise.
Yeah. Look, it's one of those where I can see both sides of the argument. But Alex, like myself, you've been a massive advocate of David Raya, and having seen his first season at Arsenal, and obviously not judging him completely for it, do you see him and go, look, this could well be our long-term goalkeeper?
I think I do. I mean, I think back to that game where Ramsdale played against Brentford, and I can't help but you just feel a different set. You get used to a certain type of goalkeeper, and you get used to certain actions. You get used to how long they stay on the ball. In the same way that when a player's missing, the team just looks different. Almost like you could just like squint, and the team looks different. The amount of time the ball's sort of at his feet, and how he baits us, how teams step onto us, how he can play around us, his ability to step in as a sort of another centre back, if you want to call it that, but into that line with Saliba and Gabriel. You saw how much of a difference it was with Ramsdale. The problem with it is you always kind of, not to end up singing, but you don't know what you got till it's gone. I won't sing. And yeah, I don't know what else is out there from a goalkeeping perspective. I think with other, I think it's the one position where it could really elevate you. There might be an extra 5-10% out of the goalkeeping position out there, but it feels like the one position where it's almost the hardest to judge that, if you know what I mean. I feel David Raya has given us enough this season to let him show us, another level. I think there's a touch more command of his box. I'd like to see a little bit. He's not in any 1v1 situation, so I'd like to see him in a few of them, frankly, and sort of see how he handles those. Obviously, the mistakes that George was referring to, a couple of percentage points here and there where you just go, yeah, there's room for improvement, but you can't argue with the Golden Glove. You can't argue with the stability he's given us in that back line. Is there someone out there? Maybe, but is it this summer and has he not deserved next season to show us he can sort of step up on those slight percentage points? I don't think that's fair at all. I think David Raya is a position that we can say that is set in stone for next season, and we'll reassess next year. We could also be sat here next year at the exact same time saying David Raya is the best goalkeeper in the league. It's not out of the realms of possibility to say in terms of his numbers.
Is he this season? For as much as I've had criticisms of him, I have to look across the season, and I mean, look, Allison's a difficult one to really talk against, but is he not up there?
He's up there. It's kind of what I was saying about how hard it is to judge because they're in such a context. You see what I mean? That within the shots faced, how can you really judge Andre Onana? Can you? Like, is it possible to?
That's
with
the weird
United
thing,
structure
with goalkeepers is keepers that I guess make more saves and end up having to have a higher number of saves made and clean sheets, or not clean sheets, but shots faced and stuff. They end up looking better because of the stats. And if you look at the best goalkeepers in terms of stats each season, it's probably teams that are fighting relegation, and Man United goalkeepers because they normally concede a lot of shots.
Relegation teams, even if they're not down there.
But do you not think that's almost a gap in the misunderstanding of the casual fan? Where I would argue, if you were a coach, by the way, you're looking at an active keeper and you're worried. You're not praising it. You're worried that he's so active, and so from a coaching perspective, I think it's difficult because, like you guys said, really, I'll just come out and say it. I think people don't know how to evaluate goalkeepers because really active goalkeepers, people think good, whereas from a coaching perspective, you think bad. And so you work towards all year to have your goalkeeper not have to pull out saves. But when he's constantly pulling out saves, the casual fan is like, that's a brilliant keeper. He's reliable. He saves us in situations. I'll pose a question to you both. I think this really encapsulates it. How many times have you felt that David Raya has saved Arsenal points in terms of his shot stopping? Because that's what the fan goes to.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's many. But he does do it in how he stops shots coming to our goal regularly. And that's how he does it.
I agree. I don't think it's many either. But I think you're right in the sense that we don't have that many situations where he's had to make a save. We don't allow that moment. And look, it's definitely fair to say he's got the best defence in front of him and he's the most protected goalkeeper. But I think, this idea of how to judge top goalkeepers, you have to look at them differently because the likes of Edison and Raya will make less saves. Even Alisson, for example, Liverpool concede more shots than Arsenal do. So he's more likely to make that save because he's in that scenario more often. I think that the best example used to actually be David De Gea. He used to have he had that insane season in 17-18 where he made save for save and he was insane and we saw it all. And then I think United changed a little bit and they became a little bit defensively better. So they were conceding less shots and they had to be more concentrated and he couldn't do it. He couldn't make those saves anymore and he would make more mistakes. So I think as fans, we can't underestimate the levels of concentration you have to have as a top goalkeeper, especially for this Arsenal side where we don't concede shots. So, you're not as warm as a goalkeeper and that can affect you.
Yeah. My headline with Raya is he's done enough this season for us to go, let's make that purchase option. Let's move ahead with him next season. And let's get a bigger sample. Again, a guy in the position. We can't divorce this from the fact that Arsenal have the best defence in the league. We simply can't. So we might need a bigger sample to judge him. With other goalkeepers, you might go, right, 5 games, you've started to work him out. With Raya, I still feel like I'm working him out. And seeing those sort of underlying things that come in. I think it was interesting what Mikel said about him in terms of the situations you don't see that he prevents. And I think that's key to remember for fans.
Yeah, we definitely are one of the best goalkeepers in the league. And I'd also argue we've got one of the best 12th men in the league. Now, if you watch NBA, you've got the 6th man of the year. If we had a 6th man of the year in the Premier League, like the 12th man, the player that Mikel turns to the most, I think it's our left winger, Leandro Trossard. 11 league goals, 16 in all comps. I think 9 of his goals have been game state changing. The equaliser against Bayern, the winner against Everton, the opening goal against Wolves. We have to give this guy more praise, guys.
He's amazing. He is the perfect example of how you maximise a squad place. I said this in a tweet, but I think he's on £90,000 a week. I think he's got a goal and assist contribution every 112 minutes or something like that. I actually don't know the starting numbers, but I know he's played 46% of the available minutes. And I think is certainly in our top scorers for the season, or certainly top GA together. I can't remember.
He's our top non-penalty goal scorer.
Yeah, it's the perfect example of how you maximise a squad role, and also in terms of the price paid, in terms of the positions he can play. This is It's funny though, because with Trossard, maybe this want to do sort of more Trossard praise, but for me it kind of brings up the question: whenever something's going really, really well, you look forward and you go, "How long can this last?" I mean, that's just my my brain, and I'm going, is Trossard though? If we sign, let's say 2 forwards, we all want to sign 2 forwards in the summer. Does Trossard get bumped down because of that?
I think that's the issue. That is the issue, because we know that he's not going to be a starter next season. But then he's so good as a squad player that you can't not have him in the squad. And I think that's the question. How if we do sign a left forward, how does that affect Martinelli and Trossard together? It's a weird one. It's a weird conundrum to have. But I think for this season alone, for the present moment, I think he deserves his praise.
I've been a Leandro Trossard fan for so long. He gives me everything that I really value in the forward areas. And I think part of the one point that I'll make is, in a forward line that for me lacks efficiency, he is efficiency personified. That is who, Trossard is. And from just a normal perspective on maybe what you need from your squad and what you need from your squad players, he gives you everything. And he's probably the only example I can have in recent memory of true experience affecting the squad. Like, if you're going to build a list of our experienced players for the last 5-6 years, very little have really contributed during that season to actually helping Arsenal. The young people in the squad have really been the ones that have carried us. And I think from even just an experienced perspective, it's just amazing to rely on that type of player. We don't have enough of those in the dressing room. We have a very big swing to pre-prime players that are approaching prime, and then very little truly experienced players that contribute to the squad. And, I'm going to make a controversial statement. If I was Gabriel Jesus, I'm more worried about my squad position than I am about Leandro Trossard. If anything, he gets almost... he suffers from aesthetic bias, in my opinion, personally. He is so bloody efficient that people don't credit it. Like, I don't think we're understanding the numbers here. He is our most effective finisher this season. He's our most consistent finisher this season. And this sample, by the way, of achieving a goal every 112 minutes, it is across an 18-month sample. This isn't a small 2-3 month form chart. This is something that he's been producing since he's walked into the club. And so he's always had a mentality that's pushed the starters. And I think back to what Aaron Ramsdale says at that interview, Trossard believes he's not coming in to stay on the bench. He believes he's coming in to start. And a lot of players can have that mentality, but how many back it up? And is Trossard the best 12th man in the Premier League? How many people are as efficient as him, as consistently and as reliable from an output sense, in terms of actually deciding games?
It's certainly arguable. I think the Jesus comparison is a good one, because when we go back to sort of squad valuation, Trossard, if you're looking at, output to also availability to price you're paying for someone in your squad, to all the things you sort of write down, how efficient are we spending resources here to how much we're getting out. Leandro Trossard, if you could put that in some kind of statistical model, I'm sure Scott Willis will do it at some point, of sort of, how much you're paying, how much you're getting back, how many, the contract, the what you pay, etc., all that stuff. Jesus and Trossard are chalk and cheese, in terms of we're paying, we all love Gabby Jesus, but when we face the facts and face reality, we're paying him superstar money for not superstar output and not superstar availability. So, I completely agree with you, George, that if you're looking at someone who's questioning their squad role, not questioning their football ability, but questioning their role in this team and where you fit in, I think you come to Jesus first, but I will still press the question of, if we sign 2 forwards in the summer, where does Trossard fit into that? I want him to, by the way. I want him to, but it is a question. Yeah,
Trossard's a player, I think it's weird, because if he drops a third in the pecking order, will he try to move away? Because right now he's in a very nice place in the squad, so he knows that he's going to get minutes, he knows he's going to get starts, and he knows he's going to come off the bench. If that changes and we sign a left forward this market, how does he respond to that? Does he agitate for a move away? Is he happy with the Cedric El Neni role, which I doubt he is? But then again, players can get injured, and we might sign a player, and we saw with Timber, we signed him and he was an amazing player, but he get injured straight away.
And who's to say that those players perform? I mean, fundamentally, I look, you want it. This isn't superstar analysis that the foreign player will play, right? But I do look around the squad, and I'm trying to think in the league, who is the best 12th man across the league? I constantly come back to Trossard. I mean,
Jota, maybe?
is Alvarez? Maybe. Like, I'm looking.
Yeah, maybe.
No,
Maybe
I
Jota?
I would say Trossard's better than Jota. And I say that mainly because Jota is always injured. So if you're going to be a 12th man, you need to be reliable. And if you're not available, I think you get discounted.
And exactly, and that's my point. So even if new people come in, they've got to perform, and these are standards, by the way. Like, a goal every 112 minutes is nothing to sniff at. These are the standards. And I think if you were a starter, by the way, we're looking at that goal ratio and saying, yeah, I'm well happy with that in a forward line. So I think that needs to be the level. And I look at him and I start to think back, when have we had a similar type of player? And I am going back to our superstar teams in terms of Will Tor, and I am going back to those types of players that were reliable and definitely starters on most teams. And I think that needs to be the level. So whoever we recruit needs to understand that they're not a guarantee to play. And I do think from a wage perspective, we need to ask more Jesus questions for all the ability, because he's clearly a footballer with more ability than Trossard. Does he have more impact than Trossard? No. And it's not just when he's fit. I could make a case like Trossard, for me, even though he's more available, even with available minutes, Jesus is not producing the same level of decisiveness in the final third.
It's not to say this will happen, but Trossard is the exact sort of player who, when a teams change manager and they make sort of a new raft of signings, but there's always one player who still plays no matter what. Like they've got just spent 70 million on a winger, but the manager's like, no, I still want to play him. I don't care what you've done upstairs. I still want to play him. He's that sort of player. So I wouldn't rule him out, certainly.
Yeah. I think he's a player that he gives me a base that I need and I can trust. I know exactly what I'm going to get. He's reliable. He's never going to be the 10 out of 10, but he'll give me the 7. And I like the 7 sometimes. He's a nice player to have. He's comforting, for sure. So he can come off the bench and make an impact, for sure.
Bhavs likes the 7s.
Yeah, okay. Well, another thing that's very comforting is the fact that we have a number 6/number 8/ whatever you want to call him, who's very good, very, very good. He now has 7 goals and 8 assists this season. He has more assists than James Maddison, Bruno Fernandes, Phil Foden, and there's one more player I'm forgetting here, Morgan Gibbs-White. I don't know why he was in that stat. And
Messi as well.
Probably Messi as well. Look, Declan Rice is thriving now, more and more as a number 8. And it's weird because you had the recent article come out from David Ornstein that Arsenal were actually looking at Bruno Guimaraes, and he actually mentioned him as a 6, which kind of caught me off guard. So I'm not sure if we're going to sign Bruno as a 6 himself, but the idea of keeping Rice as the 8 and actually investing more as a 6, George, does that make sense to you because of the fact that we have Thomas Partey? And that would have been the plan anyways if Partey was fit. And if Partey is to move on this summer and we're meant to replace him, surely you keep Rice where he's thriving. Because you look at that goal he scored, that goal is not of a number 6. That desire to break into the box, to go, no, I want to score a goal and I need to have an impact in this game. That's a real attacking player's instinct. And we've seen it in times this season, the runs he makes in that final third, his spatial awareness. It's not just something that it seems natural to him at least. So do you think it is a matter of 6 over 8?
I think even in that article, it kind of answers that question that it's not quite that. I mean, I think when you look at it, a lot of the benefits of Declan Rice in those 8 positions that people want to say, they're all arrivals, right? They're never him standing in the final third areas, making an overlap. They're all arrivals into the box. And the space in order to do that comes from a deeper position. It comes from a more 6 position. And so I think it's more about understanding that the modern number 6 is more of a mobile 6. And that's always been something that I've envisioned for Declan Rice, where if there is an overload on the same side, get involved, get up. There's no problem with you being high up the pitch. You don't have to be the one that constantly anchors. And we have enough competency in the rest defense that we can allow for those types of overloads. We can allow for our 6 to go up and his partner to stay. And there needs to be a little bit more of that kind of dynamic that I think we find in terms of like who we go for in terms of a 6 or an 8. I think that truly when we're looking at the future, Arsenal are going to pen teams in. And so this idea that we need a 6 to stay, I think is BS. Like, I don't think you need to have multiple people staying in the back line when you've got such a brilliant athletic defensive base. You can allow yourself to have a little bit more freedom. And when I look at the 8 position, though, I do ask myself, is that somebody that's operating in the final third or the middle third? For most teams in the world, that's the middle third. For Arsenal, it's the final third. And I think it asks a bit more cuteness. And so that's why I'm very hesitant to say Declan Rice as an 8. I think that there are games for him to play as an 8, but I look at people in the 8 as one of the 5 channels in the front line consistently, who can receive consistently, who can make those overlaps consistently. And I think that Declan Rice, while he's good at running, I think his true value has always been on the ball. And his true value has always been in his ability to escape and drive the team forward. If Declan Rice is somebody that is constantly making the runs, he will be impactful because he's a world-class player. But I don't think you get the best out of Declan Rice if you don't have him in the center of your team. And I think that we've even seen sample of that in the last couple of months. When we have seen him as an 8, he's had some good performances, and then he's had some ineffectual performances. And the team's been yearning for him to come back in the middle of the park in some of those games. So I think it all depends on the partner that you have with him and making sure that that's complementary, because we can see with Thomas Partey, he looks better as an 8. But with Jorginho, I would argue, didn't look as great.
Yeah, it is weird. It's all about partners. You're right. And Alex, I'm sure you must have tweeted out yesterday about partners and one potentially staying in Thomas Partey. And a quote from Mikel Arteta, talking about maybe Thomas Partey's future and where he might be next season. Do you think it's as simple as, people think Partey is definitely going to leave? That's the idea, he's going to leave. But do you think that is the case? And do you think maybe we might be in for a surprise?
I don't know. Look, you don't throw a player of that quality away if he's available for nothing, and you don't throw him away if you got him on a contract for another year. But the question is always his availability. It's such a boring thing to say, really, but it's true, and it's no one has ever questioned Thomas Partey's quality on the ball in terms of what he can give us. Maybe there's been some questions about whether it's always suitable for certain games, but in terms of across a 38 game season, across a 50 game season in cup competitions, etc., Thomas Partey is playing 95% of that. He is a terrific footballer. So, the quote essentially was something along the lines of a reporter asked Mikel something like, do you ever think about what would happen if Jurriën Timber and Thomas Partey had been fit the whole season? And he sort of says, something about flipping a coin, which I don't quite understand. But essentially he says, ask me again in 3 to 6 months when hopefully they played more games. Which, you're never going to get a manager saying, yeah, we're going to sell him this summer, by the way. But, I don't think you say that sort of thing. And I don't think you play him in the way he's played him in this run-in without a sense that Thomas Partey is someone that he wants to plan with moving forward. I also go back to what George said earlier in terms of, true experience with Trossard. He's again, one of the only players who probably gets in a first 12, 13 of Arsenal, who is at an age where they are, have that sort of level of experience and level of quality over a long enough sample. It's all about compliments, and it's all about complementing what we do. I think the only thing I'd like to add on the Rice thing is, if you look at the article, which I would love to be on the pod to chat about, was about he was talking about these sort of off-ball runs for the 8, when the real difference is sort of Mikel likes to make lots of off the ball runs, and both goals, both Trossard's and his, come from those sort of those runs, and you can see that. Again, is that the best way of using Declan Rice? It's a kind of perennial question, and I think I might be leaning towards what George was saying. Is his best partner Thomas Partey? I don't know. For me, to conclude, Thomas Partey's skill set is not going to be easily replaceable in the market. We need to supplement and add. And I don't think going, Thomas Partey, I appreciate the availability concerns, and I appreciate the other concerns about, his age and, his wages and all that sort of stuff. But that quality, if we can have it for 20 games a season, especially for his final year of his contract, it just is worth it for me. And it means we don't have to spend, 100, probably 120 million to get that. I know it's not enough in terms of when Thomas Partey is at his best, if he was 24, he's an 120 million pound player. I'm telling you that. He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of people look at this season. They'll look at this season and go, look, he's missed most of it, so he's very injury prone, and he's definitely injury prone. I'm not saying he's not, but I think this season's been a bit worse than normal. I think it's been abnormal in the sense that he's never missed this many games. So I don't want to judge him completely off this one massive injury. I don't think he's reliable enough to start him 38-game season, but I think if you can rotate him better with the players we have now, Jorginho and Rice playing there as well, not being as reliant upon him as we were last season, I think we can, maybe maximise him a bit better and keep him fit and available. But, roles are very important and partners are very important as well. The role of Kai Havertz is looking very nice. You know, I know it's nice, by the way, when you get Monday Night Football and Sky Sports talking about it. When the player's doing well and it gets to that part of the mainstream media and Gary Neville goes, yeah, I think he's amazing. Yeah, look, that's when you know he's doing all right. And Kai Havertz was it was meant to be Jamie Carragher, quite good the Scouse accent. Maybe I'll leave that for Alex. But look, Kai Havertz he's not just in the headlines right now, but I think people are starting to give him actual respect now. It's not just a matter of pity and, oh my God, you know, he's doing all right. He made a great pass. We got to praise him now. It's like, no, he's performing at a very good level. Watching that performance against Bournemouth live, I was like, okay, this is very nice. I'm getting a lot of what I want. And we keep asking the same question of, oh, do we need to sign a striker if Havertz is there and whatever. But looking at Kai right now, and how he's playing, let's just say we were to sign a striker, how would that affect his role in the team then? Because, you know, George has always talked about him playing as a number, I guess a secondary striker. But how would that fit in our current squad? Is it playing maybe back where he was early in the season on the left side and moving forwards?
Not in how I envisioned it. Ideally, he definitely, for me, should be the tip of an arrow, you know, in terms of a diamond midfield. And he has to... Yeah, like he can't. I also don't agree that from the left he sees the pitch in the same way either. Another way that I feel that we could be using him as well could be as a right wing backup as well. I think he's played it for Leverkusen quite a bit, and I think that there's going to be games next season that we do want potentially that outlet. So I think there's that plan B aspect that, you know, we could have him in. But primarily, I don't think his role changes. It's all about arriving into the box for Kai Havertz. And I think allowing him freedom to be the facilitator on either side. You know, when you look at kind of this graphic, the one thing that I'm going to say with my data management hat on here, these stats are really, there's not much knowledge we can gain from them because the sample is over double in terms of the amount of games. It's far too small of a sample to really talk about. And when you really look at kind of the possession numbers and the possession won, the number of difference isn't big enough, especially considering the sample size.
Just if you're listening on audio, this was a season comparison for Premier League stats per game of Havertz at number 9. He's played 10 games. He's played 26 other games. Sky did it yesterday, but yeah, you can go have a look. It's on AFC VIP on Twitter.
Yeah, and so like these numbers, they bring up a talking point for sure about what Havertz's role and his best role is. Fundamentally, he's never been a pure 9. And I think even people that look at it can see that, you know, he does other things that you really value. And I think that you need to give him that freedom. If you continue to platform him as the main option or the main go-to guy, I think across the 38 game sample, we don't see the same form. I've not been convinced that I see enough aggression in possession for me to rely upon him as a Champions League and title winning number 9. And so I mean, I do feel that we need more moments.
Yeah, just to argue against that a little bit, I'm looking at it in the sense of Kai is a 9, even though I agree that he's not an out-and-out 9. I don't think this Arsenal team maybe needs an out-and-out 9. And the platform that he offers us, that focal point, and the player that we can aim for going forwards, to having Bukayo Saka and co as well, and also goal contributions. You know, he had 13, I think, in 12 games in 2024, playing as a striker. He's consistently helping us going forwards, and we can't even say it's stat padding because in the most important games of the season, the likes of Chelsea and Spurs, he's turned up and he's scored goals. He's improving game by game. It's not just a thing of this is the ceiling of Havertz. Every game we see him, he comes out a little bit better with more and more confidence. So yes, you know, I don't think he's a Haaland for sure, but maybe we don't need a Haaland.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because, I mean, I think on one hand, he's very young and he's very coachable. So I don't think that this is the cap of Kai Havertz. I guess what it goes down for me fundamentally is I don't think he'll ever be a killer. And he will never have the aggression and possession at baseline that I'm comfortable with. But that's why I almost feel it doesn't mean that I don't want him in the team. It means I want to give him the freedom so that that doesn't have to be the job description. Because in terms of being a number 9, I think long-term for a Champions League winning team and a Premier League winning team, moments, you're looking at Kai Havertz. Does Kai Havertz at striker bail you out of Bayern? Does he bail you out of Bayern or Porto even? Because that's what you're looking for a number 9. Now, does that have to be the 9? If it's Saka or Martinelli or somebody else steps up, no problem. But the fact is, I don't think that this front line, for example, has that moments player. Doesn't have that inevitability in transition. We need that transitional inevitability, and it can come from different people. So if Kai Havertz facilitates that, then no problem. It could be as a 9. But I will kind of maintain, I think that if you make not Kai Havertz be the platform that the team plays to consistently, as opposed to playing through Kai Havertz, then you're going to be left restricting the freedom that he even needs to thrive. I really think that he thrives off the fact that he has no role. If you define his role more, then I think you get a worse Kai Havertz. And the reason that we've actually got a better Kai Havertz at Arsenal is because his role and his freedom is given so greatly. He's given such great freedom. So he actually looks better in that sense. And that idea that he can drop in and facilitate to kind of create overloads in different areas is where, for me, his superpowers have come in, why this team looks very different with him at the 9. That's the quality that I think I see in it. But it could be semantics, especially if you end up having a more ball-dominant 8, right? And then you use him more as a free-floating 9. That can work. But it does imply a change in how we play, I guess. And I don't know, is that enough? Do you guys actually, let me throw it back to you. Do you believe Kai Havertz at his peak? Fundamentally, in terms of all of his skills, is he at his peak worth changing the team to platform to? Because it's all about, for me, platforming and who in this team that you want to platform. I've been very clear. I think we need to do that with Bukayo Saka. And I can find ways to platform any individual at the top level right now. But by doing that with Kai Havertz, you do have to make the concession. Other people in the team will suffer. I mean, we've seen it with Martinelli in terms of the role change there. We took away 15 non-penalty league goals and we've kind of shifted it in other areas right now. Now, we're achieving our goals, so it's a benefit. But do you guys believe Kai Havertz at his top physical ceiling and technical ceiling, by the way, is somebody and a player that you're worth having that superstar platforming for?
I suppose maybe maybe sort of no is my general answer, but with a few caveats. I think Kai Havertz's best quality is to platform other people. So, and the question is, and maybe the only thing you sort of, let's use the term build a team around as a sort of interchangeable thing for platforming, is maybe his arrivals from midfield. That might be the only thing you could build certainly a team dynamic around, a dynamic that can work in certain games. But I think for me, when I've seen Kai Havertz at his best, he might have had a goal contribution, and he might have been on the end of stuff, and he might have got us out of certain holes. But really, his best all-round play is when he's facilitating for other people. I do feel Kai Havertz, I used to think was going to be paired with something more central. But I think Kai Havertz is going to be increasingly paired with something from the left. I really feel the Kai Havertz conundrum and the sort of left side of our team conundrum is going to be solved, 1, by Jurriën Timber, and 2, by something from the left that is then going to be platformed. I think, to answer your question, George, I don't think there's a quality in Havertz that is better, that we should build around, that is better than his facilitation of other players. Does that make sense? I feel, whether it's ball striking from the left-hand side or creating separation 1v1, and Havertz is the one who keeps the line high or whatever it might be. For me, Havertz is such an intelligent footballer that wherever he is, he's going to facilitate for other people, and that's where I see him. I think the problem with coming in as a number 9 is you immediately assume, well, that's the player everyone's working through. He's the hub of the team in terms of the final ball. He's always the final action. The end goal of every sequence of Arsenal is to get the ball to the number 9 in a position to score. Whereas actually, I would rather put Havertz in the machine and ask the wingers to be, or possibly even a midfielder, to be the ones who are platformed, who are the action. That's where I see Havertz.
Yeah. Look, I definitely hear the argument for Arsenal needing a moments player, and we talked about it in Champions League many times, right? And we talked about who that might be and in the current squad. But if we look into the transfer links, I love to look at the transfer links. There is a player that has come up that can provide moments, and he's very good at I guess he can beat his man, and he's got a bit of similarities to an ex-Arsenal legend, at least in terms of comparisons. He's nice, he's quick, he scores goals, he's got 20 league goals now. And he might be available for the cheap price of £100 million. George, let's talk Alexander Isak.
Alexander Isak is a very interesting one. He's definitely in the echelon of the type of player that I'm talking about in terms of buying. And he's not my subjective first choice, but I would be very happy with an Alexander Isak. And I think the big thing that I love about Isak is because he's also not the number 9 that you absolutely have to go to, by the way. He's very Havertz, ironically, but for the left. You would be having 2 players. And this is why I do constantly talk about Havertz as in a partnership, because what Havertz does for the right-hand side, Isak will do for the left. He will come in, he will drop, he will solve problems on that left-hand side. He will dribble, he will be an outlet. He's perfectly capable of being a wide outlet as well. He doesn't always have to be through the middle. And he's somebody that, between both boxes does a brilliant amount of work in terms of connecting and making sure that he can also deliver the final ball, or he can be somebody that can dribble out of trouble. The one thing with Isak is I think there are times that in contact he can look frail. There are times in contact that he isn't strong enough. And there are times that in the box, for example, I think his aerial ability is quite poor despite him being tall. And I think, when I look at it, I actually don't worry about Alexander Isak becoming a killer or being a killer. I actually think he has one of the best shot placements in the league in terms of when he gets the ball in the box. He always puts it away from the keeper. If you look at it, I'd love for somebody, if they have numbers, to do that. But just from my personal eye, no matter where he is in the box, I find that he's always finishing away from the keeper, and it's a brilliantly intelligent finish. So I don't think he's got an issue in terms of being a killer in the box. I think he'll give us some box presence. The one thing is, I don't think between Isak and Havertz, we've got a consistent aerial dominator in the box, which means half space crossing is something that we're still going to struggle with. And, I think as a team, it's something that we need to improve on. So those are the couple things that I think both of those players, by the way, are almost 6'4". There's no reason that they shouldn't be completely dominant in the air, but they just aren't. And so we need them to be a bit stronger in that aspect. And if you're talking about from a Raya out ball, I really see a situation where Kai Havertz can make the run that Isak drops in for. And that could be a really fruitful partnership. But I will warn people, I hope you realize that means that the wingers are going to be more wide. It is a vertical exchange. If Havertz is going over the top and Isak is coming in deep, our wingers need to stay wide for the width. And so I ask people, for as much as you like Alexander Isak and as much as you like Kai Havertz, are you okay with that change? And it's not regimented. I mean, there will be times that Bukayo Saka and Martinelli, or whoever the wingers are, will come inside. That will be a case. But fundamentally, they really do their best work between the 18-yard box. Both of those players, by the way. They're not players that enjoy the touchline width role. They'll go there and then they'll leave. They're not people that hold the width. So somebody has to do that in our squad. On the right, we've got a much more consistent overlap in Ben White to help Bukayo Saka come inside. But then we've got another player in Martin Odegaard who also likes the inside, and there's a lot of issues if you're going to have that with Kai Havertz also floating in to that space. So you start to ask questions of yourself about where are our best players going to be platformed in that dynamic, in that chemistry.
I think you've hit on something really important there, George. I think there will be a lot of people listening to this and understandably who maybe haven't put that all together and have gone, next season, what do you want? Well, I want Martinelli further inside. I want Saka further inside. I want Odegaard inside. I want Havertz inside. And I want to sign Isak at a number 9. And you're going, this isn't going to work.
A lot of inside channels. How many inside channels do we have?
It's a lot of half spaces there. It is a concern. And thinking about how that all works is going to be interesting over the summer.
Yeah, I think honestly, it comes down to when you look at the Isak and Havertz question, ironically, they both perform the same role. If you really want to talk about it, Isak is a facilitator. I think he's got a lot more transitional inevitability than Kai Havertz. He's definitely quicker and he's definitely more complete in the dribble. A lot of the things that you talk about with Kai Havertz, for me at least, is there's times that he can be inconsistent with his technique. Isak is very aggressive with his technique. So that's why for me he's a little bit better. But in terms of just broad role, ask yourself, what is Isak? He is both a facilitator and he does his best work between the boxes whilst being a really effective goal scorer.
And I also, any attempt to remove Havertz from this team, remove him from where he is at the minute, I also asked them to look at Jamie Carragher's analysis on Monday Night Football, which again wasn't particularly mind-blowing. We all kind of know it. But the clips he pulled out of Havertz working his arse off to get back in and get, and to sort of sacrifice his own game in a way to support Arsenal getting men behind the ball and being that sort of compact 10. I think there was some kind of bullshit stat Sky pulled out about compact state per 90 or something.
As a nerd, I loved it.
Yeah. It's I love it. It's the new field tilt. But Havertz, anyone looking to go, well, I think we can pull Havertz, further back or push him further, whatever it might be, you're pulling him away from those zones and maybe possibly, I don't know, or maybe people have factored this in, not factoring in that thinking of like what he gives us in terms of defensively as well. It's so important.
Yeah, there's a lot to look into Kai Havertz's role, and I'm sure it will be very important this Sunday in what is going to be a very, very interesting game. It's a very important game, also very interesting because we're facing our old foe, Manchester United, Eric Ten Hag Man United, who have just lost 4-0 to Crystal Palace. I'm not sure if you guys caught the game. It was pretty hilarious. But look, the likes of Casemiro as a centre-back potentially starting. Harry Maguire's injured. So you're going to have Casemiro, Evans, centre-back partnership against an Arsenal attack that scores quite a few goals. Now, look, I see why some Arsenal fans are a bit, they're not scared, but they're a bit cautious. They're going, no, we don't win at Old Trafford. But I feel like right now, with the form we're in right now and the players we have fit and available and looking at United's poor form, if we don't go out there and get a nice victory, then I am a bit concerned about our players more than anything, because I think United are very poor right now, and look, you have to respect them, but they're there for the taking and we have to go and slaughter them.
They are... Man United... Okay, well, first let's deal with the game and then maybe we can talk about Man United in relation to us, actually. We have to be confident going into that game. We have to. The fact, as I always say to George, the fans can be nervous. I'm allowed to be nervous. The players, come on, guys. Come on. Watch that game on Monday night, last night, and tell me you haven't got something for them this weekend. So, I always say, I know, George, this concerns you more than me, but, there are fans who sort of, get worried about every single game, and I get it from a fan perspective. But the players, come on, watch that. Look, I think United are in such a strange position. I don't know if you guys caught the Ten Hag interview with Gary Neville that he did. He did a half-hour special with Gary Neville. It's just red flag after red flag after red flag. A lack of responsibility, a lack of accountability. When Gary Neville is talking to you about your tactics and asking you why the distances are as mad as they are, and Ten Hag is just blaming injuries, the state you're in. Like, he's, I'm sorry, but that can't be put down to injuries. It is instruction. It is players working for each other. I think Clive Palmer said it on Twitter. They don't want to be out there. They do not want to be out there. But watching Man United really, because obviously we're Arsenal fans, it makes me think about us. And I'm like, I suppose since probably 2013, and probably for us since about 2006, both teams have been looking for a return to something. They've been looking for a return to that era of dominance in different ways, on different timelines, with different managers, in different, at different, stages, etc., etc. But what United are right now is everything we're not. And we are everything United are not. There's passion in the team. There's aggression. There's a commitment to the manager's ideas. There's a fearlessness. There is a manager at the helm who wants to communicate, who wants to talk, who wants to take accountability, who understands every facet of the game matters, and your communication and how you hold yourself and how you present yourself is so key. So I was watching the United game thinking, how funny this all is, but really looking at the job that Arteta has done and thinking, this could have been us. We could have taken a wrong turn. And the United players are playing with the weight of that badge on them. You can see it. As every goal goes in, you hear in your head, this is Manchester United. And the entire football world is doing that. And that is where Arsenal could have been. Maybe to a different degree, because I do think United have obviously a bigger fan base. But it makes me just more grateful for Arteta. It's like when you see your ex with a new man, you're like, okay, have fun. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's that feeling of like, yeah, cool, we made the right decision. I'm good.
They are like the worst. They are the worst defensive team in 2024. Really quickly, I've really been upset with the framing of the Old Trafford visit. I find there's so much PTSD, and you cannot ignore the football. And everybody keeps talking about you need to respect the game, and of course you do. I mean, we need to do this in every game that we do. Of course we need to respect them. Of course it's not a fact of there's zero chance that Manchester United carry any threat. But I'm going to maintain, and I'm going to not just even boldly, just factually say there's no excuse that this Arsenal team shouldn't be dominating and having a very high likelihood of walking out with a brilliant result. Simply put, There's no way that in 2024, by the way, this isn't just a form thing. You know, Manchester United are the worst defensive team in the league in terms of XG against. They're only behind West Ham from 2.14 to 2.12. In terms of shots faced, they face the most shots in the league, guys. It's worse than Sheffield. Before it was Sheffield that faced the most shots in the league. They are factually the team in the league that faced the most shots per game. Do you know how ridiculous that is? And then you combine the spacing between midfield, let alone the injury aspect, let alone the changes in terms of their team. So I think going to Old Trafford, I think, is something that we have really failed in recent years. And you need to talk about some of that history. It's not something that you completely ignore. But my point has always been, why is the story of the game the Old Trafford history and the curse and the PTSD, and not Manchester United are the worst defensive team in 2024, and Arsenal, the highest scoring team in the league, are going to that ground that have really suffered lately. I'm telling you right now, they concede a goal, that crowd is going to turn, and it's going to turn worse because it's Arsenal. It's going to hurt worse because it's Arsenal.
Look at our away record as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I think generally speaking, the framing is something that I'm just not really comfortable with in terms of Arsenal fans going into this. And you know, I hate having to caveat everything. Like, I can sit there and say I like pancakes without saying waffles are shit. Like, we really need to stop this kind of discourse. You know, genuinely speaking, you cannot get away from the fact that this Manchester United team are genuinely one of the worst teams that we've seen in recent memory. And this Arsenal team are one of the best teams that we've seen in recent memory. So that will naturally mean that you should walk in as favorites, despite the past fixture list. And I feel as though as the title race continues, there's going to be a lot more pressure and a lot more worry and a lot more angst in terms of if we do it. And I think that's carrying over into how we frame individual games, because, I mean, you made it there. A Johnny Evans and Casemiro center back partnership. A Casemiro that got dribbled past 8 times. Sorry, is my mic not clear? 8 times he got dribbled past. And I'm supposed to sit there and like really honestly say, I'm worried about that. Look, I don't want to demean people that are definitely looking at, like, listening to this pod and saying, like, I think that you're being harsh. For example, I think Marcus Rashford against Ben White 1v1. Valid point of concern. They're definitely, that's not been a really good matchup in recent memory. But if I'm going to sit there and really talk about the game, I think that Manchester United have far more fears. And if we're looking at PTSD on one hand and the state of play of how poor United are in 2024 as a defensive record on the other, I'm definitely looking at the defensive record as more of an impact on this game than I am on stupidness or PTSD or shooting ourselves in the foot. It's definitely a factor, but it's not as big as those other things.
So, lads, in terms of the title race itself, we've got United this weekend, but before that, City play against Fulham. Now, look, if things go to plan, or, you know, if God listens to our prayers, Fulham might get a point there. But if Fulham are to win that game, or sorry, City are to win that game, and Arsenal lose or drop points against United at Old Trafford, then City would have a chance to win the title against Spurs. How do you see this title race playing out in the final 2-3 games? Do you see City dropping points against Fulham, or maybe against Spurs, or is it a matter of it's going to the final day of the season?
I feel both teams win all their games. That's my honest feeling. I think Arsenal win comfortably at Man United, and I think we beat Everton on the final day, and I think City win 3 in a row. And I think, well, and then win their 4th Premier League title in a row. I hate to be that guy, and with no sense of hate to say I told you so, but City are just, they're not real. They are robots. They are coached by the best. You know, we've done all this before, but you know, you guys know that stuff. I just think, which is why I start to focus back on us, and I say, look, what we've done this season is incredible. To be on the, you know, I think we'll end up being on something like 53 out of 56 in 2024 or something around that kind of number. Ridiculous numbers, ridiculous form. We're an incredible team, but we're just in an era with Michael Jordan, unfortunately. Yeah,
look, it's a weird one, because I'm looking at City and I feel like they will drop points. I just have a feeling, because they haven't lost a single game since December, and I'm thinking at one point you're gonna drop a point, because they're not playing as good as they were maybe a couple of years ago. They're not playing imperious football. They are looking at times vulnerable. Maybe not the game against Wolves, but the game against Forest. I feel like with the games they have left, they're a bit tricky. Fulham, Spurs, and West Ham. And I feel like if they give even an outside opportunity, I wouldn't be surprised if a team was to get a point off them. And that's all Arsenal fans need. We don't need to see it to lose a game, by the way. It's just drop points. And I think that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, and I've said this before, they have to make history in order to beat us. And I'm very comfortable with that situation. I'm very comfortable with being wrong in that sense, because I think, like, Alex, when you talk about them being robots, that they have to have had a better record than they've ever had to beat us. They have to have gone on a longer unbeaten run than Pep and Man City have ever done in order to beat us. So they've been pushed to their absolute limit in order to do it. And at that sense, I can hold my hands up and shake your hands and say, you were the better man across this campaign. And I have no problem doing that. I think the fact that we're able to push it and we're having conversations that Arsenal are going to do it and achieve 89 points, which is something that they haven't achieved in God knows how long. And I think that fundamentally, for me, I'm with Bhavs. I think that I definitely still think that there's a chance, and there's a good chance. I don't even think it's just so-called hopium. They're facing teams that give their biggest weakness the toughest test. And for me, if you're able to solve that, then brilliant. I mean, you were absolutely deserving of what you were able to get from that sense. But from Arsenal's perspective, I don't think that they're facing teams that give them the biggest worries. For example, if our fixture lists were switched, again, I would say that Arsenal have the harder run-in right now. And, I think City have the harder run-in. So if they beat us during the harder run-in, then fair dues. Fair dues.
Yeah. And I just think they will.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Pep hasn't beaten Spurs. And I don't even think that he scored. I think Tottenham, that stadium is the least amount of goals that he scored in his career. So the Juju, if you're a Juju person, it lines up for a brilliant storyline.
Let's hope so.
It's gonna. It's weird though, because the storyline that Spurs fans want is they want City to absolutely calm them and hammer them. Not even like a loser, hammer them, right? And it will be funny because knowing Spurs as a club, knowing how they operate, is if they were to give Arsenal even a glimmer of hope, and how would their fans celebrate that? Let's just say Arsenal have beaten United and City have beaten Fulham, and that's a game that City have to win. The City end up dropping points there. How do Spurs fans look at that game? Because every goal that Spurs score is actually helping Arsenal potentially win a title.
It would expose their lack of mentality, really simply. Because every fan that I've seen online is hopeful of that and just trying to do the exact opposite about winning the maximum amount of points. He's actually doing the right thing. And people are more concerned about banter. Guys, if the situation was flipped, genuinely, what would you want? Like, would you actually want Arsenal to lose so that, Spurs finally get their title, or that you progress as a club? Because I really feel that we're in this era of immediate media reaction. And will it be annoying? Of course it will be annoying. It's the first title they would have won since color TVs have been in place. So, of course they'll be loud in the moment. But history will still not look kind to over 10 Premier League titles. It doesn't matter what they do at this point. And I think it's just the wrong mentality to have genuinely. You need to be happy with your club progressing. And you shouldn't be concerned about inflicting pain on other clubs when you're rebuilding. Focus on your steps and your progression. And I said that for Arsenal, and I'd say that for Spurs.
Yeah, it's the magnitude of how much they want to lose that game that I find very funny.
Spursy, innit? It's just Spursy. But look, we need to go. By the way, I don't know what we want to do this, but I wouldn't change anything this Sunday. I'd go in, I could be very, very focused, do our job, keep it simple, and just look. Let's hope. You never know. I suppose the thing is for me is I almost can't imagine it, and I feel like you almost need to imagine it, like almost like a visualization of it. I just can't imagine us winning the title this season, and that's a me problem. I appreciate, but it's that is the thing that's stopping me predicting us. But
I think we've got an Aguero moment in us. I see an Aguero moment where, by the way, even if Spurs are the ones to drop points, which I think is the game that they would do it in, we still have to win Everton, by the way, to be guaranteed, because I think they're beating West Ham, right? So I can just see a situation where we're approaching the final game of the season. Everything's tight. It's in our hands. And there is an Aguero moment where Arsenal sit there and they're able to do the business with the Invincibles there in attendance.
That would be unbelievable. Exactly 20 years on. Last game of the season, last manager's game of the season, manager bounce. Can we hope for that with David Moyes? Is that a thing?
It's weird because the Invincibles are all also going to be in that final game of the season. They will be there against Everton to be awarded their 20 years, like whatever it is. They're going to get that. And if we have something to celebrate as well, and the thing is, if it goes to the final day of the season, this is the heartbreaking thing. Even if we don't win a title, if it's gone to the final day, both stadiums have a trophy in it.
Yeah.
As an Arsenal, will have a title there to celebrate with. They will have the boards there to celebrate with. Even if we don't use it, it has to be there. And that's going to be the heartbreaking thing if it does happen.
But we're back in the conversation, lads. That is the most important thing. We are back in the conversation. We're back where we wanted to be. And that is, whatever
Where
happens.
does that leave Pep for you guys if he was to lose the title? I don't think we've ever really talked about it, but I really think there's a high chance of him not staying on if he loses the title.
I can't remember if I said it on here, but I'm developing a decent stance that either way I think he goes.
Yeah.
I just have a feeling that Pep might look at I think he knows those charges are coming. And he doesn't want to be in charge when those charges drop on City's head, because they will be a problem. We're looking at Everton and Nottingham Forest, etc., with a couple of charges. This is 115. A couple of them will be proved. So it's coming down the way. And also you look at Girona and their whole City group situation. They've got a whole problem coming down the path. So I don't think Pep wants to be there. If he wins, I think he's got the 4 in a row and he's done what he's had to do. So then why would he stay? And I think if he loses, that proves that there is another big competitor who are arriving and here to stay in Arsenal. Does he want to do that? I'm not saying he's scared of Arsenal, but what's his motivation to stay and fight?
Let's be quiet on City before they give us a cease and desist letter as well, and we have to get in trouble. But anyways, guys, that is the pod there and there. Massive game this Sunday. Hopefully get a win. But anyways, guys, we'll see you next time. Take care.
Peace.